All right, so buckle up, everybody. It's time for another deep dive into this wild car market.
Yeah, things are pretty interesting out there.
That's one way to put it, I guess.
Especially with those new car prices, they just seem stuck at record highs.
It's kind of crazy, right?
It is. Our CoPilot's car price index actually shows that the average new car price is almost $50,000 now.
Ouch.
Yeah, 49,496 to be exact.
So not exactly what you'd call affordable.
Not really, and unfortunately the used market isn't offering much of a break either.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing.
Used cars are averaging over $32,000.
32,251.
Right. So no matter where you look, it seems like buyers are getting squeezed.
Big time. So what's the deal here? Why are prices so high? I mean, is it all just supply chain issues from a few years back, or there's something else going on?
Well, it's definitely a mix of things. We're still seeing those lingering effects of the supply chain disruptions you mentioned.
Right.
Those really messed with the availability of new cars.
Yeah.
And that pent-up demand from back then, that coupled with rising production costs, has kept those new car prices up.
So basically, when new car prices go up, it pushes up used car prices too.
Exactly. It's like a domino effect.
Okay, so how are automakers dealing with all this?
Hmm.
I mean, are they feeling the pressure from buyers who are hesitant to shell out so much cash?
Oh, they're definitely feeling the heat. Our recent press release actually highlights this growing concern.
The one titled, "With New Car Prices Stuck at All-Time Highs, Automakers Brace for Consumer Pushback."
Yep, that's the one. Sales actually slowed down in the third quarter of this year.
Really?
Yeah, and automakers are starting to realize that they need to adjust their strategies.
Makes sense. I mean, everyone has a budget, right?
Exactly. So they're starting to get a little more creative with incentives to make those price tags a bit easier to swallow.
Okay, so more deals and things like that.
Precisely. We're seeing more financing deals, cashback offers, and other promotions popping up.
So it's not all doom and gloom for car buyers.
No, not at all. There are definitely some silver linings out there, especially if you know where to look.
Well, that's why we have you here, right?
Yeah.
To give us the inside scoop.
Exactly. And that's where our incentives radar tool comes in.
Okay, so tell me about this incentives radar. What is it?
It can really help you pinpoint some of the best deals available right now. Like, for example, we're seeing some great offers on the Audi A8.
Really? Luxury cars, too.
Yeah. The Honda Prologue is another one that's being heavily incentivized. And even the Ford F-150 has some pretty sweet deals going on.
Hold on, deals on a luxury car, an electric car, and a truck. I mean, those aren't exactly known for being budget friendly.
I know, right? And that's exactly why these incentives are so noteworthy. It shows that automakers are really feeling the pressure to move inventory.
So that's good news for buyers, right?
Definitely. If you're willing to do a little research, you can find some real gems out there.
Okay, so let's break down this incentives radar a bit more. What kind of information can you find there?
Well, it shows you all sorts of savings opportunities. You can see which models have the most generous cash rebates, low-interest financing offers, and lease specials. It's constantly being updated, so you're always in the loop on the latest deals.
So no more scouring the internet for hours on end trying to find the best deal.
Nope. We do all the heavy lifting for you.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got high prices, we've got incentives, but what about electric vehicles? Where do they fit into all of this?
That's a great question, and it's a whole other layer to this car market puzzle. EVs were in a bit of a slump for a while, but we're actually starting to see some signs of life again.
So are more people embracing electric cars, or is something else driving this uptick?
Well, incentives are definitely playing a big role here, too. Automakers are offering some really attractive deals on EVs to make them a more competitive option.
Makes sense.
But there's another factor at play that's shaking things up: even more competition from China.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about that. Chinese automakers are really making waves in the EV space. How is that impacting the market?
Well, companies like BYD and NIO are producing EVs that are significantly cheaper than their US and European counterparts.
Wow. So how are companies like Tesla and GM reacting to that?
They're definitely feeling the pressure to reevaluate their pricing strategies. It's a classic case of disruption,
Right.
which can be both exciting and nerve-wracking for the industry.
For sure. So what do you think this means for the future of the EV market?
It's going to be interesting to watch how it all unfolds. Increased competition usually leads to more innovation and better products for consumers. But there are also some political factors that could influence things.
You're talking about the recent election and President Trump's views on EVs?
Exactly. He's talked about potentially eliminating the federal EV tax credit.
The $7,500 one?
Yeah, which could have a big impact on affordability and sales. On the other hand, he's also hinted at encouraging Chinese EV makers to set up shop in the U.S.
So a lot of unknowns and potential shakeups.
Absolutely. It's a very dynamic situation with a lot of moving parts. But that's why it's more important than ever for car buyers to stay informed and do their research.
Absolutely. Okay, so with all this uncertainty swirling around new car prices, EV adoption, and political factors, where can savvy shoppers actually find some good deals right now? I mean, are there any?
Well, as we mentioned, those incentives are a good place to start. Dealers are especially eager to negotiate on vehicles with high inventory. Our data from CoPilot's Car Price Index can really help you identify those sweet spots.
So we're talking about models where dealers have a surplus and are more likely to offer discounts. What are some examples of those high inventory vehicles right now?
Well, the Audi A8, for one, there's a generous $10,000 cashback offer on some models. Another one is the Honda Prologue.
That electric SUV.
Yes, it's also being heavily incentivized.
So even in a market where prices seem sky high, there's still opportunities for those who are willing to do their homework.
Exactly. And remember, that's where our incentives radar can be your secret weapon. It'll help you navigate those deals and avoid overpaying.
It sounds like an essential tool for anyone venturing into this car market. But what about the used car market? Are there any bright spots for bargain hunters there?
Absolutely. While used car prices are still elevated overall, we are seeing some interesting trends. Our data actually shows that used car prices have been dropping faster than new car prices, especially for larger vehicles like SUVs and pickup trucks.
So if someone really wants an SUV or truck, but the new car price tag is too high, the used market might be a good option.
It definitely could be. For example, our car price index reveals that used SUVs are only worth about 59 cents on the dollar compared to their new counterparts.
Wow, 59 cents on the dollar for a used SUV. That's a pretty compelling argument for going the pre-owned route. Are there any other segments where used cars are a particularly good value right now?
Yes, luxury brands and domestic brands are both hovering around 60 cents on the dollar compared to their new counterparts.
So if you're open to buying used and you're looking for a luxury car or a vehicle from a domestic brand, you might be able to snag a great deal. Okay, so we've got incentives on new cars, dropping prices on used SUVs, luxury vehicles, and domestic brands. It sounds like there are actually quite a few silver linings in this market, despite those high average prices we talked about earlier.
That's right. It's all about being informed, knowing where to look, and having the right tools at your disposal. And that's where CoPilot comes in. We're here to help you navigate this crazy car market every step of the way.
So CoPilot can help with finding those sweet deals, but what else can it do?
Oh, we go beyond just finding deals. Our app and data tools can also help you avoid shady add-ons, decode all that confusing dealer jargon, and even arm you with information so you can negotiate like a pro.
So it's like having a car buying expert in your pocket.
You could say that. We're here to be your advocate and make sure you feel confident and informed throughout the entire process. Remember, knowledge is power when you're buying a car.
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground here. New car prices at all-time highs, automakers scrambling to entice buyers with incentives, the rise of Chinese EVs, the wild card of political factors, and some potential bright spots for bargain hunters in both the new and used car markets. It's a lot to digest. But where do we go from here? What should we be considering as we continue this deep dive?
That's where things get even more interesting. We need to take a closer look at specific segments of the market, examine those price trends in more detail, and explore how different brands are navigating this challenging landscape.
Okay, I'm ready to break it down even further.
Great, let's dive in. Okay, so let's zoom in on domestic brands for a minute.
Okay.
They've been hit especially hard by these price increases.
In what way?
Well, our car price index shows that new GMCs, for example, are a whopping 44% more expensive than they were back in March of 2020.
44%. That's a massive jump.
It is. So what's going on there? Why are domestic brands seeing such dramatic price hikes?
Yeah, is it just the economy or is there something else going on?
Well, the overall inflationary environment has definitely played a role. You know, the cost of everything from raw materials to labor to transportation has gone up.
Right.
And those costs ultimately get passed along to the consumer.
Okay, that makes sense. But is there anything specific to domestic brands that's contributing to these price increases?
I think there's also an element of them trying to catch up with foreign and luxury brands in terms of pricing.
How so?
Well, for years, domestic brands were often perceived as more affordable,
Right.
but they've been steadily increasing their prices to position themselves as more premium offerings.
So they're aiming to move up market and compete more directly with the Toyotas and Hondas and BMWs of the world.
Exactly. And you can see this shift reflected in the features and technology they're now incorporating into their vehicles. They're not just basic transportation anymore. They're packed with all the bells and whistles you'd expect in a higher-end car.
That's a good point. They're really trying to elevate their image and offer a more luxurious experience. But what does this mean for buyers who are specifically looking for a domestic brand car? Are they essentially priced out of the market now?
Not necessarily. While new domestic cars have gotten significantly more expensive, there are still deals to be found, especially if you're willing to consider buying used.
So the used market might offer some breathing room for those who are loyal to domestic brands, but also need to stick to a budget.
Exactly.
Tell me more about the used car market for domestic brands. What are we seeing there?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, used car prices overall have been dropping faster than new car prices.
Right.
And this trend is especially noticeable for larger vehicles, including the SUVs and pickup trucks that are popular segments for domestic brands.
So if I'm in the market for, say, a used Chevy Tahoe or a Ford F-150, now might be a strategic time to buy.
It could be. Of course, you always want to do your research and make sure you're getting a fair price. But our data does show that there are some real bargains to be had in the used domestic market right now.
What about specific brands within that domestic category? Are there any standouts in terms of value?
Yeah, our car price index actually reveals that used Chryslers currently represent the best value for consumers among used domestic brands. They're currently worth about 51 cents on the dollar compared to a new Chrysler.
Wow, it's a significant discount. So if you're looking for a reliable and affordable family car, a used Chrysler might be a smart option. So we've talked a lot about domestic brands.
Yeah.
Now let's shift our focus to foreign brands.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in that segment of the market?
Interestingly, foreign brands have actually experienced less overall inflation since the start of the pandemic compared to domestic brands.
Really?
Yeah. New foreign cars are up about 26% on average,
Okay.
while new domestic cars are up 34%.
So while foreign cars are still more expensive than they were a few years ago, those price increases haven't been quite as dramatic as what we've seen with domestic brands.
That's right. And this difference is likely due to a few factors.
Like what?
Well, for one, foreign automakers were generally less impacted by those supply chain disruptions we talked about earlier during the pandemic.
Right.
They also tend to have more efficient production processes, which helps to keep costs down.
It sounds like they were better positioned to weather those pandemic storms. Are there any specific foreign brands that are particularly affordable right now? Any standouts in terms of value?
If you're looking for a new car, Nissans have seen the least amount of inflation among foreign brands, with prices up only 20% since March 2020.
So a new Nissan might be a good option for those who are budget conscious.
Yeah.
And what about the used market for foreign cars?
If you're shopping for a used car, Volkswagens represent a good value. They're worth about 59 cents on the dollar compared to a new VW.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, let's move on to the luxury car market. That's always an interesting segment. What trends are we seeing there?
Luxury cars are definitely holding their value in this market. While prices have fluctuated a bit in recent months, they're still significantly higher than they were pre-COVID.
I imagine the demand for luxury cars remains strong even with all the economic uncertainty we're facing.
That's correct. Luxury car buyers tend to be less focused on price and more interested in the brand, the features, the status that comes with owning a high-end vehicle.
So if you're in the market for a Mercedes, BMW, or Audi, be prepared to pay a premium.
Absolutely. However, there are still some relative bargains to be found in the used luxury market. For example, used Land Rovers currently represent the best value for consumers. They're worth about 53 cents on the dollar compared to a new Land Rover.
So if you've always dreamed of owning a Range Rover, now might be a good time to start shopping for a used one. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here talking about domestic brands, foreign brands, and even luxury vehicles. But I want to circle back to something that's been a recurring theme in our discussion: the impact of the recent election on the car market. We know President-elect Trump has expressed some strong opinions about the auto industry, particularly when it comes to EVs. How do you see his policies potentially affecting car prices and affordability in the coming years?
That's a really complex question, and it's tough to predict with certainty how things will play out. However, based on what we know about his stated positions, there are a few potential scenarios we can consider.
Okay, so let's break it down. Let's start with his stance on the $7,500 federal EV tax credit. He said he wants to eliminate it. How would that impact the EV market?
Well, the tax credit has been a significant incentive for consumers considering an EV.
Right.
It helps to offset that higher upfront cost of electric vehicles, making them more competitive with gasoline-powered cars.
So if it's eliminated, we could see a slowdown in EV sales.
That's definitely a possibility. Without the tax credit, EVs would become less affordable for many buyers, especially those who are price sensitive. And that could lead to a decrease in demand, which could in turn put downward pressure on prices.
Okay, but wouldn't that also hurt American automakers who are investing heavily in EV production?
It certainly could. If EV sales slow down, it could make it harder for automakers to recoup their investments in electric vehicle technology.
Right.
And that could lead them to scale back their EV production plans, which could further hinder the adoption of electric vehicles in the U.S.
So it's a bit of a catch-22 situation. Eliminating the tax credit could theoretically make EVs more affordable in the long run by forcing automakers to lower prices. But it could also slow down the transition to electric transportation by discouraging both buyers and manufacturers.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance, and it will be interesting to see how the new administration approaches this issue.
Now, what about President-elect Trump's campaign promise to encourage Chinese automakers to produce EVs in the U.S.? What are your thoughts on that?
It's definitely an intriguing idea. Chinese automakers are already major players in the global EV market, and they're known for producing affordable electric vehicles.
So if they start manufacturing in the U.S., it could lead to more competition and lower prices for American consumers,
That's the hope. However, there are also some potential downsides to consider.
such as.
Well, one concern is that it could lead to job losses in the American auto industry. If Chinese companies are producing cars here, they may be less likely to hire American workers.
That's a valid point. And there are also those concerns about intellectual property theft that are often raised when discussing Chinese companies.
That's another risk that needs to be considered. So while the idea of encouraging Chinese EV production in the U.S. has some potential benefits in terms of price and competition, it also comes with some significant challenges that can't be ignored.
It sounds like the new administration will have a lot to weigh as they formulate their auto industry policies. There are a lot of competing interests and potential consequences to consider.
Definitely. The decisions they make will have a significant impact on the future of the American car market and the transition to electric transportation.
Okay, let's shift gears again and talk about something that's been on everyone's mind lately, interest rates. The Fed has been cutting rates, but auto loan rates haven't really budged. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a few factors at play here. One is that the auto loan market operates a bit differently than the broader credit market.
How so?
Well, auto loans are generally considered to be riskier than some other types of loans like mortgages.
Because cars depreciate in value.
Exactly.
Huh.
And there's always a chance that the borrower could default on the loan.
Right.
So lenders are charging higher interest rates to compensate for that inherent risk, even if the overall interest rate environment is trending downwards.
So even though the Fed has been cutting rates, lenders are still hesitant to lower auto loan rates too much because they're worried about the potential for losses.
Exactly. Especially with all the economic uncertainty we're facing.
That makes sense. They're trying to balance the need to attract borrowers with the need to protect themselves from potential defaults. But with the economy showing signs of slowing down, wouldn't lenders want to make it easier for people to buy cars? Wouldn't that stimulate the market?
In theory, yes. But lenders are also being cautious because they're concerned about a potential recession.
Right.
If the economy takes a downturn, more people could lose their jobs and default on their loans. So lenders are trying to strike a balance between stimulating lending and protecting themselves from risks.
It's a delicate balancing act for sure.
It is, and it's made even more complicated by the fact that we have a new administration coming in that has expressed some unorthodox views on economic policy.
Right. President-elect Trump has been critical of the Fed's policies, and he's hinted at wanting to exert more control over the central bank. How could that affect interest rates?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but if he tries to pressure the Fed to keep rates artificially low, it could lead to inflation. And if inflation starts to spiral out of control, the Fed may be forced to raise rates aggressively to counter that, which could make it even more expensive to borrow money.
So there's a lot of uncertainty about the future direction of interest rates, which adds another layer of complexity to the car buying equation.
There is. And that uncertainty makes it even more challenging for both consumers and businesses to plan for the future.
Okay, we've covered a lot of complex issues here. The impact of the recent election, the interplay between the Fed and auto loan rates, and the overall economic uncertainty looming in the background. It's a lot to take in. But before we move on, I want to bring it back to our listeners who are trying to make sense of this crazy car market and figure out their next move.
Absolutely. It's easy to get lost in the big picture trends, but at the end of the day, it's about helping individual car buyers make informed decisions.
Exactly. So for those of you who are actually ready to hit the dealerships, what are the key takeaways you should keep in mind? What are the most important things to remember as you navigate this complex market?
First and foremost, knowledge is your best friend in this market. Don't just wander onto a lot without doing your research. Arm yourself with information about pricing, incentives, and the specific models you're interested in.
So before you even set foot in the dealership, do your homework. And how can CoPilot help with that?
That's where our app and data tools really shine. We analyze millions of vehicles to help you find the best deals, and we can even help you avoid those dreaded dealer markups and add-ons that can inflate the price.
Think of it as having a secret weapon in your pocket.
Yeah.
You'll be able to walk in knowing exactly what a fair price is and be ready to negotiate like a pro.
And remember, even in this market, there are deals to be found, especially if you're flexible. Consider expanding your search beyond your immediate area. Sometimes driving a bit further to a dealership with higher inventory can result in significant savings.
That's a great tip. Don't limit yourself geographically. Cast a wider net and see what's out there. What else should buyers be thinking about?
Don't forget about those incentives we talked about earlier. Keep an eye on our incentives radar to see which models are offering the most generous cashback or financing deals.
Right, because that could be the difference between settling for a car and getting one you truly love without breaking the bank.
Exactly. And here's a final thought for those of you considering an EV. The political landscape is a bit uncertain right now, but one thing is clear. EVs are the future of transportation.
So even if those federal tax credits disappear, don't let that discourage you from considering an EV.
Not at all. The technology is only getting better, and prices will continue to come down as competition heats up, especially with the entry of those Chinese automakers we discussed earlier.
Right. And who knows, maybe President-elect Trump's plans to encourage Chinese EV production in the U.S. will actually lead to more affordable options for everyone, creating a win-win situation for consumers and the environment.
It's definitely possible.
It's a fascinating time to be following the car market, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So much is in flux. But that also means there are opportunities for savvy shoppers who are prepared to do their homework and adapt to the changing landscape.
It certainly is. We're in uncharted territory in many ways, but with the right information and a little bit of strategic thinking, car buyers can navigate this market successfully.
I completely agree.
Uh,
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, exploring the various forces that are shaping the car market and offering some guidance for those who are ready to take the plunge.
Yeah.
But we're not done yet. We've still got more to unpack and discuss, right?
We do. There are a few more nuggets of information we need to share, some additional insights that can help you feel even more confident and prepared as you navigate this car buying journey.
Okay, I'm ready to keep diving. Let's continue this exploration and see what other gems we can uncover. All right, so we've talked about navigating this crazy car market, almost like it's some kind of obstacle course. But let's be real, a lot of people listening probably just want the bottom line.
Absolutely. Let's cut to the chase. So you're ready to hit those dealerships, huh? What are the must-dos to avoid overpaying and come out feeling like you actually scored a win?
Yeah, give us the inside scoop. What's the first rule of thumb?
Okay, number one, know your numbers.
Okay.
And this isn't just about your budget, but about understanding the market itself.
Wow.
Like, what are similar cars selling for in your area? What kind of incentives are out there for the specific models that you're interested in?
So no more going in blind, hoping for the best,
Exactly. You got to be prepared, armed with data.
which is where CoPilot comes in handy.
Precisely. Our app is so much more than just finding cars, It's your research hub.
Right.
We analyze millions of data points so you can get a realistic idea of what a fair price is for both new and used vehicles.
That's great. I hate that feeling of sticker shock when you're at a dealership.
Right. Nobody wants to feel like they're being taken advantage of.
Exactly.
And we can also help you spot those sneaky dealer markups and add-ons.
Oh yeah, those are the worst.
They can really inflate the price, so it's good to be aware of them.
Okay, so knowledge is power. But even with all the data in the world, actually negotiating a car deal can be intimidating. Any tips for those of us who aren't exactly natural-born hagglers?
Sure. First off, remember that you hold more cards than you think. Dealerships, especially those with high inventory, really want to move cars.
Okay.
So be polite, but be firm. And don't be afraid to walk away if you're not getting a price that feels right.
It's like a dance, isn't it? Trying to find that balance.
Exactly. You don't want to go in guns blazing, but you also don't want to be a pushover.
Right.
And here's another insider tip. Don't be afraid to shop around.
Okay.
Expand your search beyond your immediate area. Sometimes a slightly longer drive to a dealership that has more inventory can actually translate into some big savings.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get so fixated on convenience, but a little extra effort can really pay off when it comes to car buying.
Definitely. Okay, so final thought here. What about all this talk of EVs and President Trump's potential policies? Should that be a factor in someone's decision right now?
Yeah, it's hard to know what to make of all that.
It is. Honestly, there's a lot of uncertainty. But here's the bottom line. If you're considering an EV and you're eligible for those federal tax credits, now might be a good time to take advantage of them while they're still available.
Okay, so it's kind of like a limited time offer.
Yeah, you could say that.
But what if those credits go away? Should people just hold off on going electric?
Not necessarily. The EV market is only going to get more competitive, and that means more options and hopefully even lower prices down the road.
Okay,
Plus, you can't really put a price tag on those environmental benefits of driving electric.
very true. It's not always just about the dollars and cents.
Right.
Okay, so I think we've really covered it all here. From deciphering the market trends to giving some really actionable tips for getting the best deal. Hopefully our listeners are feeling a little more confident and empowered to tackle their car buying journey.
Absolutely. And remember, if you start to feel overwhelmed, CoPilot is always here to help. Our app, our data tools, and our team of experts are all dedicated to making this whole car buying process as smooth and stress-free as possible. We're in your corner every step of the way.
That's great to hear. So to everyone out there braving the car market, remember to do your research, be prepared to negotiate, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask for help.
You got this.
That's a wrap on this deep dive into the crazy world of car buying. Thanks for joining us, and happy car hunting, everyone.